agenda of the LIBE Committee inquiry on the electronic mass surveillance on EU citizens. You have known that we had a plan today consisting of 3 sessions, namely, number 1, a presentation by Professor Stephen Pearce, law professor at the University of Essex, United Kingdom, on national intelligence activities in the light of EU primary law, but I'm sure you know that he hasn't been able to make it. So he won't be here today, and we won't be having either session 3, which is to be postponed, namely the presentation of the working document by the shadow rapporteurs, Mr. Moraes and Mrs. Infeld. They will be having their presentation in a further occasion. So we are concentrating here today on the point, the session 2nd, which is the presentation on court cases and other complaints, national surveillance programs, part 2nd. Just let me tell you that as to the language profile of this meeting, unfortunately, because of the conditions of the room available, not all of the languages will be at your disposal. There will be no Danish, I'm sorry about that, nor Finnish, not Latvian, not Maltese, nor Croatian available. Sorry to announce that none of the languages are available in this particular session. But having said this, we should be proceeding to the presentation by our guest this evening, Dr. Adam Bodnar, to whom we warmly welcome. He is the Vice President of the Board, Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights, Poland. We will be hearing his presentation. He's here for our committee to request that this organization, along with another Polish NGOs, have submitted to different state agencies and institutions with view to disclosure of public information and the responses they have received so far. Then, after his presentation, we will be having some room for discussion, questions and answers. And I suggest first the floor goes to the rapporteur and shadow rapporteurs, and then to the other members willing to intervene. So, first floor to Mr. Bodnar here. The floor is yours.
Dear Mr. Chairman, dear members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Polish Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights and the Panoptykon Foundation, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this session of the Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs Committee of the European Parliament. I would like to underline that all views shared today were prepared in connection with Mrs. Katarzyna Szymielewicz of the Panoptykon Foundation, and basically I speak on behalf of 2 organizations. We are very grateful for the interest of the LIBE Committee in developments in Poland regarding the PRISM affair, as well as the reaction of Polish NGOs to this affair. I would like to start with that our organizations, together with the Polish section of the Amnesty International, were quite surprised with the lack of proper reaction by the Polish authorities, Polish government and politicians to the PRISM and other disclosures made by Edward Snowden. We didn't have any serious debate what those disclosures mean for the rights of Polish citizens and whether constitutional right to privacy is sufficiently protected in the Polish territory. There were also no parliamentary debate on this issue as opposed to German PRISM. Therefore, after vacation period, we decided to organize a conference devoted specifically to this issue. The conference was organized on 11th September 2013. We invited all major politicians, including Prime Minister, ministers related to the security forces. But unfortunately, neither Prime Minister nor ministers relevant for those issues accepted our invitation. So basically they didn't want to listen to views or comments by NGOs or to questions asked by them. The only minister which accepted our invitation was Minister responsible for administration and digitalization, Mr. Michał Boni. One of the most important things during this debate was that he declared that the position of the Polish government will be to bring to the attention of Viviane Reding that the issue of privacy should be, and protection of personal data should be subject of negotiations concerning transatlantic trade and investment agreement. This debate was attended by politicians affiliated with human rights committees of two chambers of the Polish parliament. They declared willingness to organize sessions of the relevant committees of the parliament devoted to prison, but unfortunately such sessions were not organized until today. I think that the only direct consequence of this debate was the motion submitted by the Ombudsman to the Polish Prosecutor's Office, in which she asked the Prosecutor's Office to start the investigation regarding prison affair. But until now there is no answer to this letter. But we didn't want to stop just with making a debate. During our debate we declared that as a follow-up we'll try to submit a number of freedom of information requests to different Polish authorities regarding prison, as well as a reaction to our disclosures or relevant issues. And just 1 month later, in the middle of October 2013, we've submitted altogether 100 questions with the use of freedom of information law, but to different state institutions, such as Prime Minister, Chancellor of President, Minister of Justice, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Interior, Secret Services, Prosecutor General, parliamentary committees, Office for Electronic Communication, Privacy Commissioner, or Ombudsman. And those issues, altogether there were in fact 362 questions, but basically some of them overlapped and they were directed to similar, to different institutions. And basically we asked about specific issues, such as what was the knowledge and awareness of the prison at the moment of disclosure, what is the level of cooperation on this between Polish and US Secret Services, what were the contacts with the US administration since disclosures made by Mr. Snowden, what is the protection of Polish citizens against potential abuses, procedures applied, verification of compliance with domestic law, what was the reaction of parliamentary committees to lack of activity in this field of the government. We asked about different technical aspects, for example, such as whether secret services have access or they use the X-key score application. We also asked, because we thought that it is also relevant to this issue, what was the procedure of dealing with Mr. Snowden's request for visa in Poland. Suddenly, taking into account a shortage of time, it is difficult to make a summary of all 100 questions. I think we don't have time for this. But I would like to underline that we took into account following factors. First of all, when drafting those questions and asking them, we took into account our previous experience in dealing with freedom of information laws, including our litigation experience. And for example, in past we litigated quite successfully cases concerning access to statistical data on wiretapping in Poland. We also obtained crucial information with the use of freedom of information law of certain aspects related to the CIA rendition program. Second, we took into account the activities of German NGOs and German academia regarding this, and also some similar questions which were posed to the German government regarding this. We took into account the limited applicability of the freedom of information law. We are quite aware that we can ask only for a very specific information, and we are aware of certain restrictions that stem from the national security, issues. So, for example, we believe that we can ask whether there is any agreement between secret services and Polish secret services and the US secret services, but obviously we are aware that we cannot ask about the content of this agreement with the use of this freedom of information law. And furthermore, we were aware of the division of competences between different state institutions, but in this particular case, some of our questions overlapped because we are not ready to determine in this particular moment which institution was responsible for a given aspect of this. We are aware, and we are aware from the very beginning, that some state institutions would not answer to our questions at all, or that they will try to prolong answering to those questions. We are prepared for this because we have experience in litigation of cases before administrative courts. So, for example, when we are litigating cases concerning access to statistical data on wiretapping, it took us 2-3 years to get this data finally, but we did it, and we think that it might be the case, it might be similar case with some of the questions we asked with the use of freedom of information law. We also think that our questions should be an inspiration for journalists. So we try to promote them in order to push journalists to ask similar questions to the government. So to a certain extent, we try to do proper research regarding what kind of questions could be asked, and in order to inspire Polish journalists to ask those questions. And I think this initial lack of response by Polish politicians was quite commented in media during the recent visit of the US State Secretary John Kerry in Poland. As of now, as of 18th November 2013, we have received initial answers from some state institutions. Some of them provided us with quite comprehensive answers regarding their activities up to now. So, for example, Privacy Commissioner informed us like this. But some of them responded only partially, and those answers were of general nature or confirmed state of affairs that was quite predictable. So, for example, the Secret Services Committee of the Polish Lower Chamber of Parliament, the Polish Sejm, confirmed that there was neither meeting nor even motion by individual member to organize a meeting to discuss PRISM. Some state institutions declared that they want prolongation of a term to respond until mid-December. So by virtue of law, they have such a right to claim such a prolongation because of the complexity of questions. And for example, Prime Minister gave such an initial answer, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And we also received some answers from the secret services, and so some of them answered that because of national security they will not answer any question whatsoever. Which means that we will have to ask once again and then maybe to go for litigation. But we are also quite surprised by some of the answers that have been already received by us. So, first of all, most of the institutions declared that they had knowledge on the PRISM from media. And such declaration was made inter alia by the Minister of Justice. But for example, the Agency for Internal Security declared that they had knowledge on PRISM from so-called open sources. So, which is quite, I think, interesting. Second, we obtained information that Minister of Justice had a meeting in August 2013 with the US Ambassador to Poland. But interestingly, during this meeting, the issue of PRISM was not raised at all. We also obtained information that PRISM was subject of discussion during the meeting of the Council of the European Union devoted to Justice and Home Affairs that took place on 7th October 2013. But we don't know conclusions of this meeting because we were informed that formal minutes have not been prepared. We are also informed that during this meeting of 7th October 2013, Polish authorities signaled that explanation of the PRISM and other programs of massive surveillance is necessary, but it should not influence binding treaties with the US, such as Passenger Name Records Treaty or the SWIFT agreement. And finally, we also obtained information that none of the parliamentary committee declares willingness to organize a session devoted to prison. So, at the moment, we wait for further answers and extended transparency of Polish authorities. We hope for a certain level of their political accountability for negligence to react to Snowden's disclosures. As citizens, we believe we have the right to know what the state is doing in order to protect our privacy. Unfortunately, in Poland, this issue is not subject of political divisions. Majority of politicians tend to accept the existing status quo. Therefore, we believe that NGOs have a special role to play here, with the use of the only instrument which we have in our hands, which is the Freedom of Information Law. We also think that, taking into account our previous experience with the CIA rendition program, that the use of the Freedom of Information laws may be of help to investigative committees established at the European level. But as you can see, it takes time and basically will not stop with our effort in claiming these data. And sooner or later, we hope to collect more than we have right now. Thank you very much.
We thank you. We thank you so much, Mr. Bożna. And now, as we said, we should be opening the floor first for the rapporteur, shadow rapporteurs. First floor, thus goes to our rapporteur, Mr. Moraes.
Thank you very much to Dr. Bodnar for coming, and I'm sorry that you're taking the whole. Thank you to Dr. Bodnar for your coming today. I'm sorry that you're having to take the whole session on your shoulders. Professor Pears was not able to come at the last minute, but I found what you said is very informative. I was a member of the CIA renditions inquiry, and as you know, as you alluded to just now, there was a very big part of that focused on the NGOs in Poland. And again, the Freedom of Information Act that you used was very useful to us. And of course, the ramifications of that coming up just even this week when you have a case already this week on renditions. Can I ask then this question? You talked about two questions. You talked about the status quo in Poland. One of the things that the inquiry is looking at is our oversight mechanisms in each member state. We looked at a number of individual member states now. Last week, I think Denmark, Sweden, and so on. Do you think, first of all, just give us a general answer on whether you think the oversight mechanisms in Poland are adequate? We've asked the parliamentary oversight parliamentarians to come, and we've not had a response. So give us, as you mentioned your role as NGOs in Poland, given that status quo, just giving a snapshot of what you think. Secondly, the way that you used the Freedom of Information Act, we saw that with the CIA rendition inquiry as being very effective. Do you think you're going to get more information about what role perhaps there was with Poland and with the United States? Can you give us a bit more detail about that? Whether you said it would take time, do you think in time documents will come forward and so on? And is that something that parliamentarians in Poland are concerned about? Do they feel that pressure, or is it something that they're unafraid of? Give us some sense of what's happening. What's the culture like in Poland? I mean, is this a new story? Are people particularly concerned? Or culturally, is this not a story at all? Because it's quite interesting to see the different analysis we're getting from parliamentarians from various countries at this stage of the inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Moraes, for setting your questions and an example. Because I'm sure you all have in mind that this is a hearing, so we should be concentrating on questions, so that there will be round for answers. The way we proceed usually in these kind of sessions is that you take individually the questions and answers by the rapporteurs and the shadow rapporteurs, and then we open a second round for members which are willing to make some additional points. First, individually, you're going to be answering rapporteur, and then one by one, shadow rapporteurs. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for very interesting questions. In fact, I was once attending LIBE committee, and it was in the context of the CIA rendition over 1 year ago. And I think that here, we can see something like a similar story, I would say. That when it comes to the US-Poland relationship, politicians tend to be quite silent on this issue. Because when we look into the story of the CIA rendition, we can see that the parliamentary oversight over secret services didn't work really. Because there was only one hearing of the Secret Services Supervising Committee organized at that time. And basically, after this meeting, as far as I know, they decided not to follow up the issue. Here, in this particular case, we received the answer that the same Secret Services Committee didn't organize any meeting whatsoever on this issue, on PRISM issue, nor there was no even a motion by the individual member to organize this meeting. But I would like to, because of course when we think about the parliamentary oversight, it is not just this specific committee which can work in secret, which has full confidentiality guarantee, but we have also other committees. So one of them is the Human Rights and Justice Committee in the lower chamber of parliament in Sejm. And I know that one of the members of this committee, Mr. Ryszard Kalisz, has made a formal motion to organize a meeting devoted just to PRISM. But this motion has been submitted 2 months ago, and until now there was no meeting, and it seems there will be no. Second, during the debate, which was organized by us on 11th September 2013, Mr. József Pinor, so the former member of the European Parliament, has also declared that he will call his own committee in the Senate, in the second chamber of Parliament, to organize a meeting devoted to PRISM. But I don't know whether he submitted finally an motion or not. So in general, there was no parliamentary oversight in this particular, despite the pressure by NGOs, interest of media in this issue. So if I can comment, I think that in this particular sense, when it comes to specific rights of citizens and one of the major violations of human rights, we didn't see a parliament to react properly on this issue. When it comes to the question relating what we can obtain, I think that all our questions, these 100 questions, were very, very specific. So we asked about such things that could be answered yes or no, or that could be answered even with a single sentence. But basically, the most important questions were asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Prime Minister, Ministry of Interior. But basically they didn't respond yet, and they had time under the law. So we have to wait until December 2013. And I think that, like, taking into account my previous experience with the CIA rendition, it's like, collecting puzzles. So you collect one information from your country, you collect some other information from some other country, you collect some information from certain disclosures that happen, and all of this creates a certain picture. It is the reason why the case of Mr. Al-Nasiri and Abu Zubaydah are right now pending before the European Court of Human Rights, because I would say Polish elements were just small puzzles in the whole picture of this situation. With respect to the question relating to the general atmosphere, I think that some Polish media are interested in the issue. Some politicians, but rather individual ones, are interested. But I would say that this issue is not subject of political division. So there is like a general acceptance that, okay, so let's better be silent, let's better not touch it. You know, these are rules which the secret services work, and basically it is not our problem. So to a certain extent it is similar to the CIA rendition. So I remember when, for example, when the European Parliament was investigating the case, there was no interest whatsoever by Polish politicians, except for some individualities, to cooperate even on the explanation of this issue. So that's why we feel that we have a special role to perform here, I mean NGOs, because we can ask questions, basically. We can make those questions visible, and we can try to convince Polish society that those issues are important for their security and for their rights. There is, I would say that the exceptions, if I would compare CIA rendition and prison, I think the exception is that even right now in the government, there are some ministers who are interested in this issue, and I mentioned here the name of Mr. Michał Boni. He was also quite engaged in the European Parliament in negotiations concerning the data protection regulation. But basically, in fact, he's the only one who is able to speak loud on those issues. But still, the ministry which he is responsible for does not control the whole thing. He is responsible just for the small part of it, so he does not have influence on the policy of the whole government.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now we move to the shadow rapporteurs on the order. First floor goes to Mr. Voss.
Ja, vielen Dank, Herr Vorsitzender, und vielen Dank auch, Herr Vorsitzender. Der richtige Kanal war ja? Also vielen Dank Ihnen auch für die Erläuterungen. Ich habe verschiedene kleine Fragen, auch im Anschluss an das, was Herr Moraes eben gesagt hat, hinsichtlich der Ängste oder der öffentlichen Stimmung. Gibt es Ängste in der Bevölkerung und gibt es in diesem Zusammenhang auch eine öffentliche Diskussion darüber, was die richtige Balance ist zwischen Sicherheit und Privatsphäre? Dann, wie können Sie sich erklären, warum eigentlich das parlamentarische Gremium oder das polnische Parlament in dem Fall ein so mittlerweile Desinteresse ja anscheinend möglicherweise hat an diesem Thema, wie es dazu vielleicht kommen könnte. Eine weitere Frage, haben Sie Erkenntnisse darüber, Sie hatten zwar Deutschland erwähnt, aber haben Sie auch irgendwelche Rückmeldungen aus anderen Ländern der Mitgliedstaaten? Und Sie sprachen davon, eine letzte Frage hinsichtlich der Position der polnischen Regierung zu diesem ganzen Thema, dass man dort gesagt hat, ja, im Rahmen der Verhandlungen von TTIP heißt das jetzt vielleicht, ich weiß nicht, ob Sie das deuten können, aber ich wollte zumindest mal nachfragen, ob das mehr als eine Art inhaltliche Bedingung oder inhaltlich von TTIP gemeint war oder ob das mehr gemeint ist, dass man sagt, ja, man sollte TTIP weiter verhandeln, aber bevor wir das abschließen, müssen wir zu Datenschutz eine Regelung finden.
Vielen Dank, Mr. Bodnar. Back to you.
Okay, so I would say that when you look into the NGO sector and I would say to Warsaw circles, people are quite concerned with what happened to Mr. Snowden, and people are concerned about disclosures which were made by him. But I wouldn't say that the concern in Warsaw among academia and NGO circles translate on the general atmosphere in the society. I wouldn't say so. I observed the German debate, and we cannot say that we have similar approach here. That people understand the problem. Furthermore, we have also some our own problems with wiretapping, surveillance, and abuse of powers by secret services, and those issues are not even yet resolved. So there is a case pending before the Constitutional Court, but I don't see like a massive outreach, massive protest by Polish citizens that yes, we should do something with it. It comes like with waves. So the media are interested for a couple of days. There are some declarations by politicians. So there is something like a so they are able to control the public debate for a certain moment, but then everything comes back to reality. And so just to give you an idea, which is completely like different issue, but it shows the attitude. Until today, we do not have a single regulation on the use of CCTV cameras in public places. We do not have a law regarding this. And there is no pressure by people that we should have such a law. NGOs pressure for this, but not general population as such. So if I would say that what takes prevalence, whether it's security or privacy, it's rather security in the Polish context. And I think it is the consequence why the Parliament has so little interest in the issue. Because if it is just the issue which is raised by NGOs, which are concerned and which try to understand the consequences of this approach, but it is not a part of the general popular mobilization, then politicians do not have a need to follow this issue. And please note that we had this situation when politicians really reacted to such issues, which was ACTA agreement, anti-counterfeiting trade agreement. So Poland was the leading country in terms of making protests on streets. But at that time, it was about something different. It was not about privacy, but the general argument was that the government is intruding into our internet freedom. And it seems that internet freedom, as such, was a higher value than privacy is right now. So you cannot expect such tension because of PRISM as compared to tension that was created as a result of ACTA. And as regards transatlantic trade investment agreement, I think for us it seems that for us it is one of the very, very few things we can take certain accountability on government, because we have this declaration by Mr. Boni, which was made during our debate, that he will present issue of data protection and mass surveillance as preconditions as Polish preconditions for EU entering into the TTIP. And we know that as a follow-up to our meeting, he presented this. So Mr. Boni, he's trying to be in a contact and tries to be responsible to stakeholders. And he's responsible on the part of government to enter into this. But the question is how long it will last. For sure, if the government will try to change the position here, if the government will try to change the position on the data protection in the context of TTIP, then we'll try to create some pressure in media that basically the government is not following what it has declared before. So I would say that in this context, we'll try to control government.
Okay, now we move on to Shadow Rapporteur, Mrs. Intveld.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Bodnar, for your interesting presentations and for your efforts. In particular, I have a couple of questions to you and some more general questions. The first question, do you plan to work together with organizations in other countries in litigating and submitting national, let's say, freedom of information requests in parallel, in a kind of, joining forces, if you want? My second question, have you by any chance submitted any requests for information relating to INCEN, the European Intelligence Sharing Center? I can tell by the look on your face that you haven't. My third question to you, and by extension also to people in other countries, do Polish politicians realize that they themselves may be the target of surveillance and that information about them may be stored by other, by third country governments or indeed their own government? And do journalists and lawyers realize that their communications with their sources and clients respectively cannot be trusted to be fully confidential? My last question, Chair, if you'll allow me, is not actually a question to Mr. Bodnar, but a question to the Council and the Commission. Mr. Bodnar mentioned a debate by the GHA Council on the 7th of October, and I asked around. Apparently the matter was discussed over lunch, so it's not mentioned in the minutes. And this is, of course, a classic trick to hide from the public what has been discussed. And I think in this particular instance, people have a right to know. This cannot possibly be confidential information that affects national security. Ministers of Justice and Home Affairs discussing the eavesdropping scandal of the NSA over lunch, hiding it from their citizens. I think that's outrageous. I understand, and I don't know if this information is correct, that Commissioner Reding was present at that meeting and was actually getting quite worked up about the whole thing. I would like to ask the people of the Council present here and the people of the Commission if we can please get a written and public report of that debate. And if they feel they cannot answer that question, can I ask if the chair of this committee, Mr. Lopez, is willing to write to the Commission and the Council and ask them officially for a written report of the debate that took place on the 7th of October on present. Thank you.
We're taking note of your request, as usual.
Chair, I think that we should first try if the people of the Council and the Commission present here feel that they can answer this request.
Are you suggesting that the Commission goes first before the round of answers for Mr. Bodnar?
You're the chair, you decide.
I would say Mr. Bodnar. Mr. Bodnar, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. As regards first questions, it was to a great extent our intent to make this request for public information, and that's why we published with Mrs. Katarzyna Szymilewicz this article in Guardian, which is in your papers, in order to show that it is one of the strategies that could be followed, that some other NGOs may try to do certain things regarding this. We didn't yet start any formal work like this, but I take this idea, and then maybe we should come back, and especially when we'll be in this moment of getting more and more answers, we'll be able to convince our colleagues from other organizations to do similar work. And basically, we have worked in cooperation with number of NGOs in different countries. So for example, my organization is in a good relationship with different Helsinki committees that have similar potential to do similar work. But the only problem I see is capacity to do a follow-up, because we are, and I would like to underline here that we are prepared, that we, even with tens of questions which are not answered, we are ready to go to courts. But not all organizations which are existing in other member states have similar capacity or experience. And I think it is quite detrimental when the NGO is making a request and then is stopping in the middle. It may bring also certain damage to the reputation of such NGOs. So it is not such a, in my opinion, easy task to do. Just to say to other NGOs, please do it like this. They should have capacity to do this properly. But of course we will consider it, especially with the cooperation with Helsinki committees. With respect to the second questions, we submitted motions only to the Polish authorities. So no European level institutions. I don't know whether I've understood your question correctly. But we asked also Polish secret services, different kind of, Agency for Intelligence, Agency for Internal Security, Agency for Military Intelligence, for Counter-Military Intelligence, Central Anti-Corruption Office, so all intelligence services, but only Polish ones.
Wait for 1 second, Chair.
Yes.
Just for, as a suggestion, I mean, INSEN is supposed to be a cooperation between national secret service, but it seems to escape any kind of democratic scrutiny, because we cannot scrutinize them, but you're basically also saying the same. It might be interesting to ask a question about the Polish input, or the Polish role, whatever, in INSEN.
Thank you very much. And the third questions, we didn't have whether Polish politicians realized that they can be subject of surveillance. So we didn't have a disclosure of similar type as Germany had. So I think that they could be aware of this, but we didn't have a real example of this. But I would like to underline that some of our questions concerned just this. So what, for example, the Agency of Intelligence or Agency for Internal Security did in order to protect security of Polish politicians and their communication. So what was basically the reaction after Snowden's disclosures, but we don't have answers to this yet. As regards lawyers or journalists, I think they are, we had this debate in the context of operation of the Polish secret services. And we had some cases of some journalists, for example, whose billing information was checked by secret services. We even supported one journalist in a case which ended up with a success. So the head of the Central Anti-Corruption Office had to apologize for unlawful check of billing information of such journalists. But when I analyze the public debate, they are more concerned with the operation of Polish services than with general massive surveillance programs made by the US.
Okay, now let's hear from the Commission and the Council as to the question that was posed by Mrs. Intel here about the Reading meeting, October the 7th. Please, the Commission.
Yes, good evening. Titus Plenar from DG Justice. We are not in a position to give a response now, but we will pass on the responses to Vice President Reading.
Any comment from the Council? Any comment from the Council? Let's do it. Okay. Second note.
Not much of an answer, as we all see. Not much of an answer. I mean,
We understand there is a commitment to provide an answer from the Commission as to the meeting that was mentioned. Mrs. Intel, would you like to come?
Well, yes, Chair, I would then like to ask that on behalf of this committee, you ask the Commission, the Council officially for a written report on the discussions that took place on PRISM on October 7th.
Okay. Okay. We take note. We will proceed to gather further information as to this point, and we should be moving now from Mrs. Sinfield as Shadow Rapporteur to Mr. Albrecht. You the following, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you also to Mr. Bodnar to be here and to lay out your views and experiences also dealing with these cases and individual approaches by the NGOs. I mean, what I'm mostly interested at the moment would be the question, how do you feel, I mean, you mentioned a bit how it was in the same, but how do you feel generally the approach by national parliaments to scrutiny is taking place, and do you think that there's an opportunity for NGOs at the moment to enter that parliamentary scrutiny on intelligence work or a general debate? Because my impression is that there's not much happening in national parliaments at the moment. And the question is if that could be changed, if there is an approach by governments and national parliaments to also address the problem of safeguards in the area of national security, in your view. And linked to that, the question, if you think that safeguards, fundamental rights and human rights safeguards are properly addressed by the member states in the area of national security today, and if there's also properly the possibility for redress for citizens with regard to those infringements on the level of member states.
Thank you, Mr. Albrecht. The floor is yours. Mr. Jordan.
It's a very difficult question, and I know that you were in Poland recently participating in conferences regarding this. Our approach is that we use every possible opportunity which exists in the context of Parliament. Obviously, it is impossible for us to enter or somehow to be active at the level of the parliamentary committee responsible for secret services, because its proceedings are secret, and they do not have a practice of inviting particular members. We can to invite external experts or NGOs. The only thing we can do is just to make a general call that maybe they should start be concerned about this. We had some opportunities regarding committees dealing with human rights or dealing with foreign affairs. So, for example, I know that in a couple of days there will be a hearing in the Foreign Affairs Committee devoted to the visit of John Kerry to Poland. So I think maybe it is the opportunity when NGOs or some politicians may ask some specific questions to this related to this visit, why some issues were taken or some other issues were not taken, and especially what is positive is that there are still some members of Parliament who are concerned, so they can ask questions, and they are members of this committee, and as a consequence, they may bring those issues to certain public attention. We have also there are also possibilities for making interpellations or questions, official questions by members of the Parliament. So we hope that if some of our questions are not answered in due course by relevant ministers, maybe some of the members of Parliament will take them and will ask them in this parliamentary fashion, and maybe it will produce some change. And in fact, these are so our general opportunities is just to present this issue and just to convince politicians that it is important, and to rely on the fact that some of them are concerned, and some of them, even if they are in a very small minority, still they can proceed with this. I am aware that some of the NGO leaders have already started discussion that this issue should be subject of discussion in the context of upcoming European Parliament elections. So, and I think it could be for NGOs it is much easier to create something like a questionnaire or some debates with the candidates for the European Parliament elections in this context, so what you are going to do in the context of privacy. So I think that one of the points of our agenda as NGOs would be to put privacy as the issue in the context of the European Parliament elections, and I think it is the opportunity for some other NGOs in other member states. When it comes to safeguards, my feeling is that they exist in general on paper, but in practice, when it comes to real problems, it seems that they do not work. So I mean here especially the special oversight parliamentary committee. But even, for example, one of the issues which is discussed in last years is the creation of an additional body, which would be a group of independent experts, most probably former judges of the Constitutional Court or the Supreme Court, whose task would be to supervise secret services. So basically to replicate to a certain extent the German model. Because right now we do not have such independent oversight mechanism. And I don't mean here a mechanism that would be in the parliament, but basically outside of the structure of parliament. But the debate works like this, that Ministry of Interior is presenting this idea. It is subject of discussion for a couple of weeks, let's say, in media, and then for half a year, 1 year, nothing happens, okay? And then they come back once again, and basically, I'm not really sure whether there is a real willingness to do anything that would bring more control over secret services in this term of parliament. And the term will end in 2 years, and right now, we didn't see even a draft law that would create, that would provide for creation of this special supervising mechanism over secret services.
Mr. Albrecht, would you like to re-examine?
Yeah, just a small question to that, because I really would like to know if you see that, for example, your member state, that you would see Poland in the position to effectively safeguard the human rights of Polish citizens with regard to the national security activities by EU member states. So, for example, looking at the GCHQ from the United Kingdom, acting, for example, vis-à-vis Polish citizens, is there any safeguards given in Poland, or do you think that the member states in the European Union can effectively enforce these safeguards, or do you think that this has to be debated on a European level, which I heard a bit when you were referring to the European elections? Having in mind to that, I'm asking in front of the background that this is an area which is excluded from EU competence.
Okay, I will answer this question in a little bit different fashion. Because one of our questions, which were presented to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but were basically about plans regarding future of protection of privacy, but not even at the EU level, but in the global level. So for example, we know that there was this suggestion by the Special Rapporteur on the Freedom of Expression, by the UN Special Rapporteur on the Freedom of Expression, that there is a need to prepare a new general comment and maybe a new protocol to the ICCPR regarding the protection of privacy. And so we asked the question to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, okay, so what is your position on this? Are you going to support it? Is this an issue which will be subject of the position of the Polish government in future? And I would love that the Polish government will be one of the champions of privacy in this regard. As regards safeguards right now, I think that it's difficult to say, because Polish law is quite complex, and we have all the institutions, we have the prosecutor's office, and we have all those commissioners, but the question is whether they can really react to this in a situation when there is no political willingness to do anything serious with this, that there was no even investigation by the prosecutor's office started. When we invited the representative of the prosecution office, he was not very much aware of what is the real consequence of PRISM and so on. So it is the question of discrepancy between law, legal regulations, and the existence of institutions and reality in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Bodnar. Frau Ernst, nächste Frage.
Thank you very much. Ja, ich möchte zunächst Ihnen erst einmal danken, dass Sie sich der Sache so annehmen, wie Sie das jetzt tun. Ich denke, dass es wirklich beispielhaft ist und wichtig ist zu erfahren, dass das passiert und dass es möglichst in anderen Ländern auch geschehen soll. Ich finde es auch gut, wegen der unbeantworteten oder vermutet unbeantworteter Fragen auch vor Gericht zu ziehen. Das muss man, glaube ich, machen, sonst kommt man gar nicht weiter. Also das ist erstmal für mich total wichtig, dass das geschieht und das unterstützen wir und ich will auch ehrlich sagen, wir sind Ihnen da auch wirklich dankbar, weil wir das hier brauchen, hier in diesem Ausschuss. Das war die Vorbemerkung. Jetzt meine Fragen. Also in vielen Ländern sind es Journalisten gewesen, die im Besonderen die Diskussion vorangetrieben haben. Und da meine ich nicht nur den Guardian und den Spiegel oder Le Monde, sondern auch andere Medien, und zwar aus einer konkreten Bedrohung, die auch diesen Berufsstand angeht, nämlich die Frage, inwieweit man denn wirklich Quellenschutz gewähren kann. Diese Frage haben viele gestellt, viele Journalisten stellen sie sich, und deswegen frage ich, in den polnischen Medien gibt es eine solche Debatte darum, dass man sich um solche Fragen sorgt und dass es deswegen wichtig ist, das Thema aufzusetzen in den Medien, die ja eine ganz entscheidende Bedeutung haben in der Frage. Der zweite Punkt ist die leidige nationale Sicherheit. Wir können auf europäischer Ebene dort nur bedingt etwas tun, weil das im nationalen Kompetenzbereich ist, wie wir wissen. Ja, aber auch dort ist es dann so, dass man auch nicht zu den Antworten kommt und die nationale Sicherheit gewissermaßen wie ein Schwert vor einem ist, das dann zuschlägt und jede Frage nicht beantwortet. Wo sehen Sie einen Ansatz? Haben Sie Diskussionen in Polen über solche Fragen wie nationale Sicherheit? Was ist das? Und wie viele Möglichkeiten einer wahrheitsgemäßen Beantwortung von Fragen im Zusammenhang mit solchen Dingen muss es geben und gibt es momentan? Also das betrifft mich sehr, weil wir, glaube ich, in all den Fragen auch nicht weiterkommen, wenn wir nicht mit dem Begriff nationale Sicherheit noch einmal exakter umgehen. Das Dritte. Ich habe den Eindruck, dass eine Kontrolle der Geheimdienste in Polen genauso wenig stattfindet wie in allermeisten anderen europäischen Ländern oder nur peripher oder nur ein bisschen oder gar nicht. Es ist eigentlich das Quantum und die Qualität schon fast egal benannt. Ich glaube, es ist ein großes Leck in der europäischen Debatte. Und meine Frage ist, was wäre für Sie ganz entscheidend, um auch nur im Ansatz also Geheimdienste kontrollierbar zu machen? Wir wissen, das wird nie komplett sein, aber was ist für Sie wichtig? Sie haben eines genannt, das ist die externe unabhängige Kontrolle. Das reicht, glaube ich, noch nicht. Vielleicht können Sie dazu noch mal etwas Genaueres sagen. Und das Letzte, ich bitte die Vertreter des Rates und der Kommission auch noch mal wirklich dringend eine ganz klare Antwort zu dem 7. Oktober zu geben. Ich betone das nochmal, dass wir das exakt haben wollen, was exakt dort stattgefunden hat, und will das auch nochmal begründen. Wenn Sie es nicht tun, muss man Sie der, ich sag mal so, bewussten Irreführung aller Außenstehenden verdächtigen, und das muss ja vielleicht nicht sein. Ein Stück weit Wahrheit und Ehrlichkeit, glaube ich, gehört ja auch zum Geschäft.
Vielen Dank, Herr Rodner. Bitte.
Thank you very much. The issue of journalistic freedom and freedom of expression is subject of discussion in Poland. I remember 2 years ago when there was a disclosure made that telephone data billing information of 11 journalists have been checked by the Central Anti-Corruption Office. So they immediately thereafter they've organized a big press conference saying that there is no agreement to this. And but I would say that Polish journalists are more concerned about themselves and about their specific cases, some specific investigations they do, than they are so much concerned about the state of affairs in the whole world. So for example, I don't even remember any serious comment regarding to the recent reaction of the UK government to Guardian and to the letter which was signed by numerous NGOs regarding this. Maybe it was mentioned somewhere in the Foreign Affairs section, but it was not subject of a general public discussion. And when it comes to government, you can see such a huge discrepancy and hypocrisy, I would say, even in some activities. Because on the one hand, the official policy of the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs is safety of journalists. And we even had a conference organized together with OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, on safety of journalists, which taken place in Warsaw. But when it comes to real cases, like the Guardian case, you cannot expect any diplomatic reaction by Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also you cannot expect a reaction by Polish journalistic societies in terms of this. By virtue of legal provisions, we have pretty good protection of journalistic sources. So, for example, I know journalists who are dealing with the CIA rendition case, and they were never compelled by use of some forcible measures, I would say, to disclose their sources of information. So they can operate somehow, and we have quite good tradition and a couple of good investigative journalists. And the level of legal protection is pretty good, but it does not translate into the solidarity with colleagues from UK, for example. With respect to national security, this argument, I would like to give you this example of a litigation we had concerning access to wiretapping, access to statistical information on wiretapping. When we started the case and we said that it is one of the measures of control to get the statistical data on wiretapping, secret services said no, it endangers national security. It will create a threat to Poland and so on. But over years, we won the case. They give us everything, all the statistical information, and somehow nothing has happened. The national security, to a certain extent, as I understand, is protected. So I think it is the matter of trying to overcome this language, showing that, okay, so show us real arguments here. Don't use this, as you said, this general argument, but please try to show the specific information. And with respect to monitoring secret services, I think one of the issues which sometimes escapes in the discussions on secret services is that in such countries like Poland, secret services are still bureaucratic. It means that they have to produce papers. So every officer has to prepare a motion, a specific note that certain actions have been taken or not. And a potential threat of criminal or disciplinary responsibility for abusing individual powers is one of the best methods to control. One of the methods, of course. It is not the paramount method, but they should be aware that if they overstep competences, if they overstep laws, they might be subject of some legal action individually. And it is one of the issues which is sometimes, in my opinion, forgotten in the context of talking about secret services. Thank you.
Now we can be opening the floor for further discussion for the members. As I understand, Mr. Kirkhope is also shadow, but he's not here. He's not here. So we move on to the rest of the members willing to contribute. I only let you notice that we are coming close to the scheduled end of this session, which should be by 9 p.m., so bear it in mind, so that questions and answers should be smoother and quicker than before. First floor goes to Mrs. Morvay.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the interesting presentation and the paper. I'm a bit puzzled and a bit sad by the title of the paper, which is Poland's Totalitarian History Means Its People accept surveillance and dismiss Edward Snowden's disclosures more than they should. Don't you think as a Polish person that it's a bit unfairly humiliating towards the Polish people who were fighting so hard during history for freedom? I'm also East European, I'm from Hungary, and I don't think that we accept surveillance and we had a totalitarian history because we love it. We were under Soviet occupation, and when we tried to revolt against it, we were facing Soviet tanks. I think it could be just as fairly said as the title, Europe's totalitarian history means its people accept surveillance and dismiss Edward Snowden's disclosures more than they should. It's just as fair, or even more fair, to say so. And my other question is, when the so-called democratic transition took place in our countries, in Hungary as well as in Poland, all these Westerners came to us and were tutoring us and mentoring us on democracy, the rule of law, human rights. And now it turns out that it was all a kind of a lie. I mean, the United States had been surveilling its people, and they sent political prisoners into secret CIA prisons into your country and several European countries. They used drones to extrajudicially kill people. You know, Western Europe does very similar things. If you make an analysis, a kind of a socio-legal analysis of your own country, of your own people, wouldn't it be interesting to do the same about the effect of this kind of shock on East European people? You know, we were told that there's a free world out there, and now it turns out that it was all a lie, and those who came to our countries and were treating us as second-class citizens and sort of tutoring us. So you guys, you have no idea about what is democracy and human rights, but we shall teach you. And who are the teachers? What kind of effect did this revelation have on the freedom-loving Polish people? Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to make a block with the rest of the members going to make points or questions. Please try to concentrate on questions. This is a hearing after all. Now we move on to Mr. Brons.
Thank you. I'd like to go a little bit beyond your presentation. When the heads of the three security bodies in the UK gave evidence before a parliamentary committee, they implied that Edward Snowden and the other whistleblowers had revealed methods that would allow terrorists to avoid surveillance. I haven't attended all the hearings that we've had in LIBE, but I've attended two of the longer ones, and my experience from the NSA representatives and MI5 representatives is that they didn't reveal surveillance methods, but they revealed mainly the range of people who were subject to surveillance, which was quite an eye-opener in view of the fact that it included government ministers. Is that your experience of the whistleblowers' information? It appears to me that the security services are trying to discredit whistleblowers by describing them as people who are either wittingly or unwittingly helping terrorists. Have you found you or any of your colleagues being subjected to the same innuendo?
Thank you. And now Mr. Wojciechowski.
Dziękuję Panie Przewodniczący. Chciałem podziękować mojej przedmówczyni, Pani Morwaj, za jej głos, bo rzeczywiście to byłoby bardzo fałszywe wrażenie, gdyby uznać, że polskie społeczeństwo jest w jakiś sposób poprzez okres totalitaryzmu, pod którego władzą się znajdowaliśmy przez kilkadziesiąt lat, polskie społeczeństwo było jakoś mniej demokratyczne i dawało większe przyzwolenie na praktyki z totalitaryzmu rodem. Nic takiego w polskim społeczeństwie nie ma. Te kilkadziesiąt lat totalitaryzmu, w którym polskie społeczeństwo żyło, nie tylko nie oduczyło nas demokracji, ale wyzwoliło jeszcze większą potrzebę demokracji w polskim społeczeństwie. Bardzo dziękuję, że Pani to dostrzegła. I wspomnę już w ogóle tradycje demokratyczne w Polsce sprzed wielu wieków, wtedy kiedy w większości Europy były monarchie absolutne, Polacy wybierali w demokratycznym wyborze, w demokratycznym tylko dla tej szlacheckiej części społeczeństwa, ale jednak król, władca był wybierany w tym czasie. Więc to absolutnie nie ma takiego problemu społecznego. Polskie społeczeństwo jest bardzo wrażliwe, Polacy są bardzo wrażliwi na demokratyzm rządów, na przestrzeganie praw człowieka, na przestrzeganie zasad prawa i to jest poza wszelkim sporem. Mamy problemy rzeczywiście. Ja jestem przedstawicielem partii opozycyjnej, więc nie będę tutaj występował w roli adwokata polskich władz, ale chcę powiedzieć, że na przykład praktyki związane z instalowaniem podsłuchów, korzystaniem z billingów były w ostatnim okresie przedmiotem bardzo drobiazgowej kontroli prowadzonej przez Najwyższą Izbę Kontroli, organ kontroli państwowej w Polsce, który przedstawił bardzo obszerny raport, szeroko dyskutowany w Polsce, wykazujący błędy w działalności różnych instytucji państwowych w zakresie korzystania z tych technik operacyjnych, między innymi podsłuchów. Bardzo precyzyjne wnioski zostały przedstawione. Mam nadzieję, że te nieprawidłowości, które były, będą poprawiane. Oczywiście musimy o tym dyskutować. Ta sytuacja związana z PRISM, ze sprawą Snowdena i to jest po prostu, trochę zaskoczyły te wydarzenia. Chyba nie byliśmy wszyscy na to przygotowani, stąd są problemy również w Polsce. Ale na pewno nie można tego odczytywać jako jakikolwiek problem związany z podejściem polskiego społeczeństwa, które jest nie mniej demokratyczne niż jakiekolwiek inne społeczeństwo w krajach członkowskich Unii Europejskiej. To nie jest problem społeczny, to jest problem funkcjonowania różnych instytucji państwowych i w takim kontekście proszę tylko patrzeć na ten problem. Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you, Mr. Wojciechowski. Now it's up to you. It's your turn, Mr. Bodnar, to summarize your conclusions, considering that we should be finishing by 9 p.m. Please help us out with the timing. The floor is yours.
Okay. First of all, I will answer this question whether NGOs dealing with those issues are subject of some threats or some denominations in the public sphere. I would say that in this context of PRISM, there was no discussion whatsoever regarding this. But I remember that in the context of dealing with the CIA rendition case, there were such arguments that we are helping to bring terrorists to make another attack and it will happen in Poland in a way. But it was just, I would say, publicistic, just a general talking, nothing, I would say, very, very specific or nothing individually direct. So I think Polish example in this regard is not so compelling. With respect to this discussion on Polish tradition of freedom, I perfectly agree with Mr. Wojciechowski that we have great traditions dating back to 16th century or even earlier regarding this, and I agree that Poland is and Polish people are people loving democracy and human rights. But I think it does not necessarily translate into proper sensitiveness towards such issues like privacy. I think that with this we have still work to do, and it is work to be done by NGOs, by politicians, to make people more aware of the need to protect their privacy. And I can just repeat what I've said before, that in this particular PRISM case, there was no proper reaction by politicians because there was no pressure by the Polish society in order to explain those issues. And we have written this article with Mrs. Kasia Szmilewicz being rather surprised that because of this tradition of massive surveillance in the communist times, there is no sufficient support for explaining such issues right now. That was our argument in this article. This title, which is here, I think it was given by Guardian, and it was not our title, but our argument was that especially in such countries, we should be more aware of those problems that relate to the protection of privacy, that we should not forget the tragic past before 1989. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bodnar, for your fair comments. I think it is honest enough, fair enough to thank you, to appreciate your effort to summarize in this final round of answers. Just let me tell you, we will be proceeding with our work in the LIBE inquiry December the 2nd, 3 p.m. onwards in Brussels, and we will be having the presentation of the working document on democratic oversight of intelligence services by our colleagues, Mr. Moraes, Mrs. Infeld, and Mrs. Ernst as rapporteurs. We will be having that presentation December the 5th. So that's agreed. We thank you all. That'll be it by now. Thank you. December the 2nd, 3 p.m. in Brussels. We will be continuing our work, resuming our work in the LIBE inquiry. Thank you all. And also December the 5th, we will be having a follow-up session to hear the presentation of the draft report I just mentioned by our colleagues, rapporteurs and rapporteurs. December 2nd and December 5th. Is that clear? 3 o'clock.